No, I don't.
We're ready.
This is the Fort Detrick Business Development Office Government Contracting Webinar Series. Today's webinar is Creating a Powerful Capability Statement. Hello, everyone. My name is Steve Lamberson, Federal Contractor, Business Development Specialist with the Fort Detrick Business Development Office. We are presenting this webinar in conjunction with TargetGov, and who happens to be our subject matter expert in today's webinar, Gloria Larkin. Welcome, Gloria.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Before we get started, I have a few webinar notes to share with you today so our session runs smoothly. We want you to know that we are recording this webinar to make it available to you for future access 24 hours, 7 days a week at your convenience. Due to the number of attendees today, we are going to ask you to send your questions in by email. Please send them to ask@fdbdo.com. That's ask@fdbdo.com. We promise to answer every question asked either during today's live session, or if you're hearing this as a recording, you can send in your questions anytime, 24 hours, 7 days a week, and we will reply with a personal answer. If you have any problems while on this line, call our office number. That number is 301-620-7071. Well, the next hour is going to be full of great information, so let's get started with the webinar, Creating a Powerful Capability Statement. Today, our speaker is Gloria Larkin. She is the president of TargetGov at Marketing Outsource Associates, Inc. She is the author of the book, Basic Guide to Government Contracting, and she's the author of the book, Veteran's Guide to Government Business, How to Build a Successful Government Contracting Business. Gloria has over 20 years' experience in the business development industry. She has been interviewed on MSNBC and quoted in the Wall Street Journal, USA Today, The Examiner, Washington Post, and many other local and national publications. Gloria's marketing and business development articles have been published locally, nationally, and internationally. Now, before we get going, remember, anytime you have a question, whether this is a recording or whether you're listening to this live, you can email us anytime at ask, that's ask@fdbdo.com. So Gloria, please take it from here. It's Creating a Powerful Capability Statement.
Thank you so much, Steve. I tell you, I'm so excited about doing this particular topic because if there is one thing, one tool, one piece of paper that can make the difference between winning and losing or opening the door or slamming the door, it is a great capability statement. So in the next hour, I'd like to cover these objectives. We're going to talk about what exactly constitutes a capability statement, what different types of capability statements you can expect to talk about in the federal government, what the exact format should include, where you use it, and what an effective capability statement will do for you and your company. We'll cover the 5 elements of an effective capability statement, and we're even going to go over some tips for success as well. What will a great capability statement actually do for you? I know it's a single piece of paper, but it's a powerful piece of paper because it can actually open doors. And it can open doors with all kinds of decision makers. Not only will it entice customers to consider you, but it will also serve as a summary for exactly what they need to know based on their needs. If you do this well, it sets you apart from your competitors. And that's really the challenge. The decision makers are being bombarded by all kinds of messages, and very, very few of them speak to their needs. A great capability statement will do that. And when you speak to their needs and your abilities, you mitigate the risk in doing business with you. That's why doors will start to magically or seemingly magically open. Because, you know, the government's risk adverse. If you can prepare a one-page document that helps them consider you less risky than other contractors, then you know you're in the right spot. It can even satisfy a specific request, and we're going to talk about this regarding sources sought notices. But bottom line, it proves you know and understand the market, and that's what the decision makers want to hear. So let's talk about the uses of a door opener capability statement. And right now, I'm focusing on one type. This is the capability statement that you can use with all layers of decision makers, as opposed to capability statements that may be used as part of a RFP or a sources sought response, and we'll get into that shortly. So the first use of it is to begin, continue, or solidify relationship building. It's not just the beginning step of it, but it can continue building a relationship. It can actually solidify a relationship that you started a while back. But let's say they've never heard of you before. It can actually perform as a very effective email introduction when it's done well. When you go to procurement conferences, you can print it on good quality paper and have it as a leave behind so that you have a printed copy of your CAPE statement. And then you can also email it as a PDF, as a follow-up. So you're going to be able to have two touches that will have strong impact with the decision makers. One as a piece of paper they have in their hand, they glanced at, they held, more than likely threw away, but then you're going to follow up with a PDF, and they'll see it, recognize it, file it away on their hard drive if it's a well-done one. If it's not, they'll just hit the delete key. You can use the capability statement during industry days as well as capability briefings. And when you go to the vendor outreach sessions, which are now mandated, you can actually use a tailored capability statement to meet the needs of a specific agency during these individual vendor outreach sessions. But I've seen all kinds of capability statements, and let me tell you, so have the decision makers. And when they see a poor one, these are some of the results. It can slam doors on you. And just like that guy in the picture, you can have a big L right on your forehead because it shows that you have extraordinary weaknesses instead of strengths. It proves that you're not competent in this market if you have a poor capability statement. And it actually highlights the risks in hiring you. Bad capability statement proves you don't have a clue, and worse, you don't understand them, the customer, the decision makers, and you don't understand the market. We see too many companies put together a generic capability statement, use it with everyone, and then they wonder why they don't see success. Well, this is exactly what we're going to address today. And let me tell you what a capability statement is not. It's not a resume. Literally, we've seen companies and business owners present resumes as opposed to capability statements. It may be their business resume that shows everyone they've worked for, but that's not a capability statement. Nor is it a brochure. You know, one of the trifolds, or if you have a lot of money, you may have a folder with all kinds of inserts in it. 4-color brochure, that is not a capability statement. As a matter of fact, it's a huge waste of money. It's not a one-size-fits-all document. We're going to show you how to tailor the CAPE statement for each target so that you can actually set yourself apart from all of the competition who's using the one-size-fits-all model. The great news is it's not expensive. A CAPE statement that's well done can be easily created in Word or Publisher. So it's very inexpensive. And believe it or not, a really well done one is not complicated. It's very straightforward, and you're going to find out what the elements are. And for goodness sake, it's not a PowerPoint presentation. When we ask companies to send capability statements, often we'll get PowerPoint presentations, 10, 20, 30. I think the largest one was 48 slides. That is nowhere near what the reality is. No one will open a PowerPoint presentation, let alone read it, even if it's just a few slides. So know to limit yourself. Never use a PowerPoint and email it. Instead, let's talk about what it actually is. A door opener capability statement format is a one page or maximum two sides of one page document. It will be created in Word or Publisher, something easily editable, because it needs to be a living document. And I know this might sound a little daunting at first, but you actually want to tweak the CAPE statement depending on whom you're targeting. So if you're targeting Health and Human Services and the Department of Defense, you're going to have at least two versions of the CAPE statement. Because if you imagine this, if you use the same verbiage for Health and Human Services as you do with the Department of Defense, you're either going to alienate one or both of them, and it will be very ineffective. So therefore, you want to change each document to match the target's needs. And we're even going to talk about what sections of the document you want to change to match their needs. In addition to a printed hard copy that you may take with you, you also want it to be in a PDF format, a searchable PDF format, which is why you want it in Word or Publisher. You want that PDF to be a small file size. And the reason I tell you this, it's a practical issue. I've seen CAPE statements, one-page CAPE statements that are over 10 megabytes in size. They will never reach the intended recipients. Try to make it 100% under 1 megabyte, preferably just a couple hundred kilobytes. That way you're sure it's of the appropriate size that it can reach the intended recipients. Why do I say that? Well, you know what it's like to have a full mailbox. And if you are sending CAPE statements that are 10, 15, 20 megabytes big, and they don't have enough space in their mailbox, they'll never see it. So what good is it? Instead, it's much better to have a small file size, and you'll be relatively guaranteed that they'll be able to receive it when it's emailed as a PDF. Now I want to talk a little bit about the PDF format for a moment, because I've seen folks do a great designed graphic capability statement, and then they save it as a graphic file, maybe a JPEG or a TIFF or other graphic file format, and then PDF it. And they think that's okay. Well, it's not. It's not okay because that's not searchable. it's ideal to do it in Word or Publisher because then in a PDF format they can search for keywords, and that's how you want to be found. If they're looking for a business who can provide XYZ products or services and it's not searchable, what good is it? It might as well be invisible. We're going to go into the exact 5 key elements that every Powerfull capability statement must have. You will know not just the elements but the section titles that you should have on each capability statement, and it should provide a real solution to the problem that that customer is experiencing. And this is tough because we are so used to saying, well, let me tell you a little bit about us. We've done this and that. We've been in business 15 years. We've got great people, and we have all kinds of experience. But none of that will matter if it does not speak to a real solution for that particular customer. I want you to think about that because this is what will make your CAPE statement stand out from the crowd. And let me tell you, there's a crowd of capability statements out there now. So if you can provide a suggestion of a real solution for them, for that target in your capability statement, you will stand out head and shoulders above your competition. Before we get into the actual audiences, I want to talk about the other types of capability statements, which we're not covering today because we're focusing on the door opener type. But another type is called a capability statement that's part of a sources sought or RFI, request for information response. And the reason we're not covering those today is because they have very specific formats as part of sources sought or RFI responses. So we're not going to include that. The third type is the capability statement that is asked for as part of an RFP response. Now, the reason that this is important for you to understand the different types is if you attached a door opener capability statement to an RFP response, it will not satisfy the government. When you're responding to an RFP and they ask for a capability statement, read the elements of what they want to have in it. They will usually guide you through 8, 10, 12 different elements, and they'll tell you that capability statement should be 5 or 10 pages long maximum, space and length. It's a different kind of capability statement. It's not the door opener. So today we're focusing in on the door opener kind of capability statement that will help you get a seat in front of these audiences. Right here on this slide, number 9. The audiences for your door opener capability statement are the agencies themselves, prime contractors, teaming partners, or joint venture candidates. So you're not just sending your capability statement to the agencies themselves. No, it could be to the prime contractor if you're trying to be a subcontractor. Or if you're trying to get on a team, you could send it to your potential team members or team lead. And each one of those capability statements will be written slightly different depending on which target you're sending it to. And I'm going to go into a little bit of detail about that. Let's start off. Remember I said there are 5 key elements. Well, the first key element is label the document capability statement. Right up at the top left-hand corner of the document, the first thing their eye should see is the 2 words, capability statement. Because if you do that, and they read that as the very first thing, even before they see your logo or your contact information, they will know, oh, look, this company sent me their capability statement. Otherwise, it's a flyer, a brochure. It could be called a line card, a trifold, and it's not a capability statement, so they will discard it. That's why speak their language right from the very beginning. Right up at the very top, call it a capability statement. Now, some folks say, can I call it capabilities and put a plural on there? And yes, you can. It doesn't matter. In either case, have that title up in the upper left-hand corner of the page. So it's the first thing that is actually read. The second area that's very important is to call the section title Core Competencies. Not abilities, nothing else. Don't call it anything else other than core competencies. You want to speak their language. Now, the next issue of this element, though, is that it should be laser focused on the target. And while I say a short introduction statement, I'm going to give you a tip here that's not on this slide. So the good news is you're attending today's webinar or listening to it as a recording, and you're going to know this, whereas very few other companies will understand this tip that I'm going to tell you right now. When I say a short introduction statement that is laser focused on the target, what I mean is you start off by saying your company name. So the ABC company is, or the ABC company provides the following services to, and then you put the agency or target's name in your introduction statement. So if you're targeting Health and Human Services, you put the ABC company provides services for the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, or services for the Army, or services for NSA, or whomever the target is. If you put that in your introduction statement and they see their agency's name at the very beginning, they will read the rest. That's a huge tip. If once you have stated their name, they think, and rightfully so, that you've done your homework, that you're taking the time to understand their needs, and they're going to invest the time in at least scanning the rest of your document to find out if it's indeed so. So introduce their name in your introduction statement. And then mention your solid expertise, and your core competencies should relate to their needs. What do I mean by that? Okay. It's a challenge for us as entrepreneurs to not try to be all things to all people. Instead, what we want to do is become laser focused on specific opportunities that target has open now or in the short-term future. So you don't want to talk about everything you can do. You want to talk about exactly what they need now or in the short-term future and describe how you can provide those needs. You'll have plenty of time to tell them all about everything else you can do under the sun once you're sitting in front of them. But as a door opener that we guarantee will work, you need to focus it in on exactly what they need now or in their forecast or in opportunities that you know will be coming up in the next 2-3 months or so. And then after this short introduction statement, 2 or 3 sentences maximum, you follow it by keyword-heavy bullet points that describes the services or products you provide that they need right now. So visually, if you can imagine an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper the core competency section should take up about a quarter of that piece of paper. Use all of your margins, and don't go real tiny on the font size. Smallest should be 10 font size, preferably larger if at all possible. So you know two things now. You know it should be called a CAPE statement, and you know the next section should be called core competencies. The third element that we want to talk about is past performance. This is the moneymaker in the eyes of the federal government. This will make them stand up and take notice. Because remember, the government's risk adverse. And what is the best way to prove that you're not risky is to prove that you've done this for someone else already. That's called past performance. Now, this is not your company's resume. This is not a list of all the customers you've ever done work for. If they see that kind of list, they're not even going to bother looking any further. Past performance is a term that means something very specific to the government. That's why I want you to use it. Call the section past performance. Don't call it experience. Don't call it a resume. But instead, you list the past customers for whom you have done similar work that agency needs. It's much better to have one or two examples of solid past performance based on what the needs are of that agency than to have a whole bulleted list of 20 or 30 customers that you've worked with in the past that mean absolutely nothing to the decision maker. So you have a list, 2 or maybe 3. You don't need any more than 4 maximum customers for whom you've done similar work. Now, if you're fortunate enough to have past performance at that agency, at that target, start with that. Or if you have experience in a related government agency, another federal government agency, that is totally acceptable. Or even state or local governments, you can use that as past performance. And yes, even commercial contracts can be used as past performance as long as they are similar to the type of work that the government agency needs. Okay, so we're talking about generic kinds of past performance. Let's look at an example of wording of your past performance. It should be very brief and to the point and have very specific elements to it. So as an example, let's say you have past performance with the Department of Homeland Security. You would then say, provided, you don't have to say your company name again, you just start with the word provided, XYZ services or products to enable some benefit. Then you name the benefit that that customer experienced. So you're providing such and such services that enabled the effective use of something or other, or reducing costs, or efficient use of personnel. Mention the benefit that they received right from the very beginning. So you want to have in the wording who the customer is. You start off by the customer, Department of Homeland Security. Then you describe the services or products you provided. Then you add the benefit that they saw. And then you name the contract and the vehicle and the value of the contract, if it's impressive. If it's $1 million, multi-million-dollar, couple of $100,000 contract, put that in there. If it's a $5,000 contract, don't put that in there. Just leave that element out of it. And then after that, give the contact reference, their name, their title, their phone, and email. All of that will comprise an excellent past performance example. If you don't have an example of the type of work that you've performed in the past or products you've provided in the past that relate to exactly what they need, don't waste your time and list it. No matter how proud you are of that job, only list it if it relates exactly to what they're looking for. Okay, let's go ahead into the next area, key element, differentiators. And frankly, this is probably one of the most difficult sections for companies to really embrace, because this is the reason they need to hire you. It's what makes you different than all of your competitors. It makes you stand out like the fellow in red from the sea of people behind him. And not only is it good for you to understand a concept of differentiator, but also how does it benefit them? If the target is the agency, how does your differentiators benefit that agency? Or if your target's a prime, how do your differentiators benefit them? If your target is a team member, what about you would benefit that team? Let's take a look at some examples of differentiators, and I'll show you what I mean. Now, these folks are having a tough time because they're not thinking the right way about what exactly makes them different. They're kind of stuck in a rut. But let's talk about some examples of differentiators that you could use. Location. You know, I say to tell them if you're located in a geographically convenient spot or location. For instance, if you're located within a couple of miles of them, state that. If you're located within 30 miles of them, let them know that. Why? Why is that important? Well, if your competitors are located in the next state or across the United States in a different region, your location would be a differentiator. I know if they see your address, you're thinking, well, won't they just know that I am local to them? And the answer to that is no. They won't know that you're closer than someone else unless you tell them that we're geographically located within an X mile radius. That's one of the clearest differentiators that very few companies will leverage when they have a chance. Training. What kind of training do your people have? Do they have certain certifications? And I don't mean socioeconomic. I mean, are they PMP certified? Do they have CMMI? Do you have any kind of training within your industry that you could prove through certifications of your staff? Have they undergone specific types of trainings? Do they provide certain types of trainings? That can be a strong differentiator. Do they have years' worth of experience within a particular type of service or providing certain products? Are you ISO certified? ISO is becoming a strongly sought after certification. And if you have it, you certainly want that to be known right up front, because there are very few businesses that can say that. Exclusives. Let me tell you a little bit about exclusives and how you can leverage them. I've seen companies brand their own services as ABC exclusive. They will even service mark or trademark them. You don't have to get a patent on them. That's not what I'm saying. But if you can say, We offer ABC Company exclusive trademarked process and have a name to it. That gives you the right to say it, and no one else can claim it then. It also opens up the door to sole source opportunities. If you are the only company that provides your branded services, and yes, you would be, especially if they're branded, copyrighted, or trademarked, then they're yours. They're exclusive to you, and no one else can say they have them. That gives you the opportunity to potentially pursue a sole source contract. Relationships. Let's say you're on various teams. You're on the VETS GWAC, or you're on the Seaport E team, or you're on the First Source, or you're on the CIO SP3 team. Any kind of teaming relationship you want to state as a differentiator. And then getting back to experience. Now, I want to tell you one thing not to do with experience. For instance, don't say, our team has 153 years of experience if you've only been open for 3 years. That kind of combination of years of experience to some big number is not impressive. It just kind of highlights you as somebody who is stretching the truth. Instead, put metrics to your experience, meaning if you are in construction and you can say that your teams have built 1 million square feet of such and such type of building, that is impressive. Or if you've laid 100 miles of cable, that can be impressive. Or if your people have been responsible for reducing cost to the government overhead by X number of dollars through the years of experience, or for any customer, it doesn't always have to be the government. If you can put any kind of metrics to your differentiators, that will help you stand out from the crowd. So let's move on into the key element number 5. This is the company data. Now you notice I'm telling you to put this last, not up front. Most companies will start off by talking all about themselves up front. We flipped it. Because if you start talking about the customer first, mentioning their name first, and how you can fit within their needs, they'll actually read to this part and find out more about you. In your company data, you want to include both your DUNS and CAGE codes, and you want to list your NAICS. Group them by number so that you have like NAICS codes listed with similar codes. But it's not necessary to have the description of the NAICS. You know, a NAICS code is 6 digits long, but you don't have to list the description next to it, just the numbers themselves. And I'm going to recommend that you show no more than 15 on your capability statement. Make sure it's the 2 or 5 or 10 or no more than 15 on the capability statement targeted to that agency. Even if you argue that you can perform the services required under 20 or 50 or 100 NAICS codes, list no more than 15, preferably fewer, on your capability statement. If you have a GSA schedule, a BPA, or other contract vehicles, list them, including the contract numbers. And here is where you would list your socioeconomic certifications. Your 8A, HUBZone, Woman-Owned, Service-Disabled Vet, this is where you would list them. And if you are using any state or local contract as reference points, put their numbers in here. If you're not listing them as reference points, no need to put other government entities in your company data. But we're not finished yet. You may include a 1 or 2 sentence summary highlight of your company. They don't want to see your mission statement. They really don't care about your mission statement. What they want to know is why you are a good fit for them. So you may say something along the lines of, our ABC company has experience providing the type of services that your agency needs based on the following experience. So keep it brief and to the point. You may want to bring up your financial stability. In this economic environment, financial stability matters. Meaning, do you have a credit line? If you would win the contract, can you perform? That's what the issue is. Number of employees. This is touchy for many companies. Let's say, for instance, you're pursuing a contract that requires 20 people and you have 2. Don't put that you have 2 employees. That would not be an asset, because they'll say, well, you don't have enough people to work on the contract. So only list the number of employees if you have enough that complement the contract needs. That would work to your advantage. Otherwise, it would be a disadvantage. Capacity. This word is becoming one of the most important words on the capability statement. Remember, the government's risk adverse. They want to know, do you have the capacity that we would need in order to complete this contract on time, on budget, with no problems? So in a capacity standpoint, you can say that through our credit line, we have the ability to staff up and bring on X number of employees immediately to satisfy the requirements. Our HR department is experienced in providing support for up to X number of employees. You can state your physical plant capacity. If you have to provide products, do you have the shipping capacity? You want to satisfy upfront the issue of capacity related to the opportunities that you're targeting within this agency. Let me tell you, if you do that, you will be head and shoulders above your competition. If you don't do that, you'll just be like many of the other companies out there trying to fight for a seat at the table. And we want you to get that seat at the table. From a teaming perspective, the use of teams is exploding in the federal government because of the large contract vehicles that are being used more and more often. The multiple award contracts, the GWACs, the IDIQs, and all of the other alphabet soup of contracts out there. So if you are on various teams, that's where you want to state all of the various contract vehicles and the teams that you can state you have a position on. And last but not least, the key element in company data, remember, it's all about building relationships. It's about people. 95% of companies forget to put this information that I'm going to tell you about right now on their CAPE statement. And that's your contact information. A person, a specific person, their name, their email, their real email, not sales at, or not GSA at, or not info at. They want to know that person's real email address, their phone number, both their office and direct line, maybe even cell phone. Make sure the name, title, email, phone number is printed on the CAPE statement, not attached as a business card. When you attach it, staple it, staple your business card onto your CAPE statement, they fall off. They get separated. Then they have no way of knowing who you are. And I've actually seen CAPE statements written without a website noted, so they don't even know what your website is. That is critical. So that's why you need to have your name, the email, and by the way, on email, make sure you use your domain name in the email. Please, please, please don't use Verizon.net or Gmail or, God forbid, AOL.com, because they accept very few emails from anybody anymore. So you want to have a professional email address that uses your website domain name. Use no free emails, no Yahoo or Hotmail. None of those should be acceptable as your email address. If you have all of this information that we've talked about on your capability statement, you will have created a capability statement that will stand out from your competition. You'll be able to use it not just as a door opener, but you'll also be able to send it to the decision makers to ask for decision maker meetings. This is one of the most valuable tools when you're asking for a meeting. And that's really the way to start winning contracts, when you're developing relationships with various layers of decision makers, such as the small business reps. Never ignore them. Whether you're large business or small business, you always want to meet and get to know the small business reps. If you're a small business, they can be your best advocate. If you're a large business, they can help you find the small businesses that you'll need to subcontract to or team with. Contracting officers. Now, granted, these folks are the people who have the legal authority to sign on the bottom line. It's their name that will be on your contract. However, they're usually responsible for buying virtually every kind of product and service for an agency, so rarely are they technical experts in what you're providing. Instead, the contracting officers are more interested in your past performance and your contract vehicle. Otherwise, the people who are interested in your experience are the third one, the program managers and end users. These are the people that you can talk tech to. They want to hear how you're going to be successful. They want to know what you're going to do, what services you're going to provide, what your level of experience is, where you've done this before, how you've done it, what your success ratio. They want to hear all of the nitty-gritty technical details. So these three layers of decision makers are the folks that you want to send your capability statement to and ask them for your capability briefings. So now you know all of the elements involved in a great capability statement. You know that you can use them to reach out to the government, to prime contractors and teaming partners. And here you know the three layers of decision makers that you can now send your CAPE statement to and ask for a capability briefing. Let's wrap up with a few tips for success for you. And then we can go into some questions. Remember to tailor the capability statement to the target. Use their name from the very beginning. In your core competencies section, mention their name. And then tailor your core competencies and past performance to the upcoming opportunities. That's your door opener. If you tailor it to upcoming opportunities, they will pay attention to you. So therefore, you'll be using their terminology. You'll have a particular CAPE statement for Health and Human Services. You might even have one for NIH, one for FDA, one for Centers for Medicaid, Medicare. CDC will have its own. So you will have many versions of a capability statement. An well-done capability statement could have 5, 10, even 20 versions, depending on how many targets you're sending it to. Remember to make the file size small, absolutely under 1 megabyte. And this last tip, I tell you, it's beautiful. It's actually beautiful. When you save it as a PDF, save the PDF file name as this. Put your company name, the words capability statement, and then a .pdf. So when you send it and it's attached to your email and they receive it, what do they see? Your company name, capability statement. It's beautiful. Everybody else is labeling it version 2.5.3x 06052012. They have all of these names that make no sense. And so that when they file it in their folder, they're never going to know whose CAPE statement it is, whereas yours is going to jump out at them because it has your company name and the words capability statement right in the file name. It works. It's a tip for success that will help you open up doors and see results in your government contracting efforts. So, Steve, wow, I want to thank you for giving me a chance to come and talk about capability statements. You want to open up the session for Q&A?
Yeah, absolutely, and we do have a few questions that have come in. I'll get started. All right, first question. Why can't I use a PowerPoint for the capability statement?
Well, let me clarify that a bit. I know a lot of folks like to use PowerPoint instead of Word. If you promise to use one slide, just one slide, and use that format, it's fine to use PowerPoint as the format to build or write a capability statement and then send it as a PDF. The danger comes when you start using 10 slides, 20 slides, 30 slides to get your capability statement information across. That's when it is inappropriate because you only want a one-page document.
All right. This is an interesting question. I just had 500 capability statements designed by a graphics designer and then printed. Can I use them?
Oh, boy. Oh, I'm sorry. The reason I say that is you have fallen into the trap that so many companies do. You spent probably a decent amount of money on getting this designed and printed, and now you have a generic capability statement, which really doesn't speak to the needs of any one agency. So I would say if you must use them, try to use it in something like a conference where there will be like the OSDBU conference that's held every year in April, the largest small business conference in the United States, and you're going to have 200 government agencies and prime contractors that you're going and handing your capability statement to. That's an okay time to use a very generic capability statement, but otherwise, no, don't use them. If you want to ask for a capability briefing or try to get a decision maker meeting, always use a tailored capability statement that you've created only for that target.
Good. Question number 3. Can I use my experience as an employee as past performance? My experience as an employee for past performance?
That's a great question. That is, and I get this question a lot because in many businesses, the person used to work for the government or used to work for another contractor, and they've got loads of experience, but they have a new business. So technically, they can't say that their company has this experience and call it past performance, because past performance means something very specific in the eyes of the federal government. It means that your company has done such and such for somebody else. However, you can call it experience and be very upfront. And instead of saying have the section header past performance, you need to change it and say experience. And then in the wording of the description, if you were an employee somewhere else, you could say key staff members have experience providing XYZ. Let me say that again. If you are now a business owner and you were an employee of the government or a contractor, or you have staff that used to be employees elsewhere of the government or other contractors, you can state what their experience is. You just can't call it past performance. So you would word it this way: key staff members have experience providing, and then state what that experience is and for whom you provided it and the references. The key there is always to have references. So that means somebody at the previous employer will need to be able to provide a reference for what you have listed. And that way you kind of take advantage of the wealth of knowledge that your key staff members have, but you're not misleading the government in calling it past performance. I hope that helps. Make sure that if you have questions about it, you contact me. On my email is on the screen, glorialarkin@targetgov.com, and our phone number, direct line. Give us a call. I'd be happy to clarify any points that we've discussed today about the capability statements. I want to make sure that you can get your capability statement created, and it will be a powerful one that will open up doors for you.
Yeah, well, terrific job, Gloria. Thank you very much for sharing your presentation. And it is time to wrap it up. We have a few more questions, but for those questions we did not get to, we will respond via email with answers. And if you are listening to this webinar as a recording, in the future, you may still send your questions to us at the email listed at the bottom of the screen. It's ask@fdbdo.com. Well, before we go, I want to remind you to visit the FDBDO website to see the list of upcoming webinars and listen to the past webinars posted as recordings. Our website is www.fdbdo.com. Now, the Fort Detrick Business Development Office is a free service to help companies compete for business on federal contracts. We work with companies of all levels of federal experience, and if your company has no experience on federal clients, then we provide training. So you can register with the FDBDO by visiting our website at www.fdbdo.com, and you can call us 301-620-7071. So on behalf of the Fort Detrick Business Development Office, thank you, Gloria, for making today's webinar on creating a powerful capability statement possible. It certainly was a wealth of information. And I also want to thank today's listeners for attending this webinar. So until next time, this is the FDBDO and Target Gov signing off. So long, everyone.
Bye-bye.